Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Colin Thompson. I am head of the infrastructure practice at Access Partnership, and I'll be your moderator for today's panel. Airborne again, the future post-pandemic mobility horizon. I'm pleased to welcome you to the 14th of the GVF's acclaimed webinars, organised in association with the Satellite Evolution and with the kind support of Kencast, a trusted delivery partner to the aero industry of fast, highly secure and ultra-reliable multimedia content via satellite. With us are panellists today, all industry experts in their fields with unique views on today's topic for discussion. I'll now turn to each of them to provide a short introduction. So, Timothy.
Hi, I'm Tim Southard. I'm with Global Eagle, and we are providing entertainment and connectivity services for the airlines and also maritime government and enterprise. I operate the networks for Global Eagle and handle the satellite capacity and new technology for us. My background is in satellite since 2020 in various roles operating very large networks globally, of course, and prior to that in telecom for companies like MCI and Telefonica.
Yep. And Mark?
Hello. My name is Mark Richmond. I'm director of product management for aviation at Managed Products at Intelsat. We're just about the world's largest provider of satellite based connectivity services to the market, and particularly in the mobility market. My personal background is in-flight connectivity for commercial aero and business jet here at Intelsat, and before that, I was working in flight connectivity at Panasonic Avionics. We as Intelsat have been serving the major service providers, including Global Eagle, for the last many years in this industry, and more recently have been looking at what we can do to provide greater services in flight connectivity, not only for commercial aero, but in business jet.
I'm Jim Murray. I'm a partner with PJT Partners based out of New York. We are a global investment bank that, among other industry verticals, does an awful lot of work around both passenger aviation and satellite communications. Among other relevant assignments that we've been working on recently, we've been advising the U.S. Treasury Department since April on the CARES Act relief program for passenger air carriers in the United States. And we recently completed an assignment where we advised Intelsat on the acquisition of Gogo's consumer aviation business.
And Bill.
Hi, I'm Bill Steele. I'm the chairman and CEO of Kencast. We've been delivering content, military content and entertainment content since 1993. And we do Hollywood movies, for example, all the theaters in North America and South America. We do the Navy ships, and we do the delivery of the movies to the planes in flight for Gogo and to ships all over the world. And that's picking up, actually. That kind of activity all around the world is increasing as the satellite networks get more capabilities. Thank you.
Very much, Jim. So to today's topic, the COVID pandemic has hit the airline industry and their suppliers hard. That is without dispute. However, a recent passenger survey conducted by Inmarsat of a sample set of some 9,500 suggests that 2/3 of passengers expect to return to the air in the next 12 months. 47% expect to return to the air within the next 6 months. That survey also identified that digitization is critical to rebuilding that confidence. To a large extent, technology can and will deliver those passenger needs. In-flight news from the city of the flight's destination, contact payments at the airport, and in-flight real-time luggage tracking and advanced electronic customs clearance have all been identified as key drivers and confidence builders. In-cabin connectivity ensures that passengers benefit from a vast improvement in the information and entertainment services provided. Broadband connectivity allows passengers to stream high-definition video content, video calling, social media, and messaging services. It also enables them to keep apprised of changes to their travel itinerary with up-to-date information of flight delays, flight rerouting, and enabling them to book hotels and airport transfers, among other things. Moreover, business passengers are enabled to complete their work mid-flight, preventing lost working hours and improving efficiency. In-cabin connectivity also improves operational efficiencies for airlines with electronic flight bags. An industry report by LSE, London School of Economics, predicts and forecasts that broadband-enabled ancillary revenue from in-flight connectivity will reach an estimated 30 billion for airlines by 2035. So that's a bit of the background. And with that, I would like to turn over to the panels. The first question I'd pose to the panel is, how has the pandemic impacted how business is conducted? Mark, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I certainly would be happy to talk about it. I think probably the other panelists will resonate with this. I think it's been very difficult for us to see the impact of COVID on the industry, and I think it's really forcing everyone in the business to play a long game. But as far as the actual impact on business and how we conduct our business, I know from an Intelsat standpoint, we've always had in place business continuity plans to address issues similar to this, because we're in a business that requires us to provide services, to very, very high availabilities, and the 4.9 sort of capabilities. At the same time, we've had to adapt. We've kept our essential workers on site. We've allowed non-essential to be off-site, and that has been working. We've been able to manage really some significant business initiatives within the company around our financial restructuring, around what we're doing with C-band, around what we're doing with the GoGo transaction, to be able to do that primarily and almost exclusively remotely. So it is possible to do this. But we are anxious to get back into the office and be able to see people face to face. I mean, all this is important. We adapt to do this because we have customers that depend on us, and customers like Global Eagle and Panasonic and GoGo, with whom we have longstanding relationships, are important to us, and we value those relationships, and we make certain that we're still providing them the levels of service that are required to meet their needs. So I think, yes, it's had an impact. Yes, we have to think long term. Yes, we have to adapt and shift and meet the near term needs of our business. And I think it's possible to do.
Okay, many thanks, Mark. Tim, from a service provider's point of view, do you share the same thoughts?
I do. Mark hit the nail on the head. I think that our customers, us and our suppliers, have needed to switch to thinking in terms of the long game. Southwest Airlines, of course, has continued to focus on innovation and really didn't miss a beat in looking at what the future will look like for in-flight entertainment and connectivity, and are continuing to work with us on that very closely. We did see just a dramatic drop in the beginning, as you can imagine. throughout the spring, and in the summer, we saw a bit of a return that stalled a little bit, but we did see that the government stimulus helped keep some of these destinations open and kept flights flying. And while there were fewer people on the aircraft and a smaller take rate for connectivity and entertainment, what we did see was that the passengers that were on board tended to use more capacity as they were consuming more capacity per passenger.
Okay, many thanks, Tim. And perhaps, Bill, can you comment? How does it impact your business, actually delivering the content to the airlines?
You know, we're delivery boys in the background, and we're using complex mathematics, image compression, video compression, and whatnot. We have a bunch of PhD mathematicians around here and electrical engineers. I don't understand what they say, but I know they're doing something to make everything secure and highly reliable. That's a constantly shifting and advancing technology field. And we're trying to always get that information in front of our customers. And we typically have relied on in-site visits, demonstrations, working face-to-face with them. So we've been inhibited quite a bit by this current situation. We're relying more on webinars and presentations. You can't do this kind of thing with slides too well, but to demonstrate it, you can get out in the car and still run a webinar, broadcasting up the satellite and down to the people we're serving. So it's been difficult, but we have come up with a way to deal with it pretty much. But I'm looking forward to getting back to the traditional way of exchanging information and advancing the technology all the time.
I think we're all agreed in that, Bill. Many thanks. Now, if I turn to Jim, in my introductory remarks, I referenced the LSE study, which forecast 30 billion revenues for this industry by 2030. At the onset of the pandemic, forecasts were that the IFC market would bounce back to pre-pandemic levels within a year or two. 8 months into the pandemic, do you think that forecast is still accurate?
So I think maybe if we take a step back, we believe as a firm that in-flight connectivity is going to become the norm rather than the exception over the course of this decade. And that's not just within the US or within a business traveler context, that's globally and on an all passenger basis. I think there's two separate questions though. There's one question of whether or not people are going to get connectivity in the seats, and is connectivity going to recover in terms of traffic? And then there's the second question about the LSE study specifically around revenue for the IFC industry. I think we're a bit more reluctant to take a hard and fast view on the second point. And the reason for that is, and you only have to look within the laboratory of the US aviation market to see, there are a number of different views as to how the business model of the industry is going to evolve. Certainly the capacity provider, in this case, you know, the Inmarsats, the Intelsats, the Viasats of the world, will continue to make money selling connectivity services to airlines. The question is how much of that is actually passed on to the passenger. Do we continue with the current, you know, credit card swipe or verification method where you are responsible as the passenger for procuring your own services? Or are we going to move more towards a JetBlue type model that you see in the US, where this is treated more as an amenity rather than as an ancillary revenue opportunity? And we don't know the answer to that. What we do know is that, you know, Bill Gates was on a panel that the New York Times ran yesterday, talking about his personal view that business travel is going to drop by 50% as a result of the pandemic. That kind of a lasting shift is going to increase the competition between airlines to get business passengers on the plane. And that may be the kind of catalyst that folks have been looking for 25 plus years to make this an amenity rather than a service that is an ancillary revenue generator. So while I agree with the premise that we're going to see connectivity revenue for the satellite industry rebound quickly, I'm not sure how that's going to translate into global revenue at the passenger level for connectivity services.
Many thanks for that insight, Jim. Now, earlier in the month, Steven Spengler and Steve Collar debated the merits and demerits of the service provider model to deliver optimum business returns for aero connectivity providers. What are your views on that? So should the satellite service providers be investing further down the value chain?
So vertical integration specifically. Let's take it at that topic. And here I'll obviously disclaim up front that we worked with Mark and the team at Intelsat to acquire GoGo, so we have some inherent bias to your question. But maybe we take a look from an investor perspective, right? If one is to believe what you read in the financial press, the acquisition of Inmarsat, where we were an advisor to the board, it was announced last year and it closed very early this year. A large part of that was predicated on the view that aviation was the future of satellite-based mobility services, and you had to really lean into that opportunity. So that's one example of investors literally putting their money where their mouth is on the thesis that you just laid out. I think number two is that if you look at Viasat, Viasat is the most richly valued company in the sector based on a multiple of operating cash flow, or EBITDA. And that tells us that investors, at least in the publicly traded equity markets, like this thesis that, again, vertically integrated model where you own the capacity, but you're also selling directly to the airlines is the way to go. And now you have Intelsat stepping up and acquiring GoGo's consumer aviation business and making a similar kind of statement. And there, again, given that transaction was explicitly approved by the group that will be the new shareholders of Intelsat following the restructuring, who are today their creditors, were enthusiastic behind it. In fact, so enthusiastic that you had an extremely rare occasion where a company that is in the midst of a Chapter 11 restructuring actually went out and made a very large acquisition. So I think investors believe the thesis, Colin, and I think that in our business, one of the things that you see is if investors really believe something and that's where the money flows, then it has a way of becoming a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think that raises questions. You have some very large operators out there that have capacity, that currently sell a bunch of capacity to the aviation sector that aren't vertically integrated. And so there are questions for, at the capacity level, the SESs of the world. And there's conversations that certainly need to be had with folks like, for example, a Panasonic Aviation, right? Who have to decide whether or not vertical integration is indeed the way to go. I would say the one point that I would make is that there are still a number of players in this puzzle who have not committed fully to that scenario. And they're very large operators. Global Legal is one of them. You clearly have operations at SES as well. And so there is still time on the clock, and we're going to see where the industry goes here.
Yeah, many thanks, Jim, for that. Now, in returning to the air, there seems to be different confidence levels in different parts of the world, in different regions in the world as the impact of the pandemic unfolds. Now, have the panel seen more confidence from airlines in Asia or another region for planning to purchase IF solutions at this time or in the near future? Tim, would you like to take a?
Sure. So we, because the lead time and the sales cycle is so long for in-flight connectivity, these deals we are still seeing a good bit of interest. Asia, sort of South Asia and India, especially, sort of haven't missed a step in their processes of reaching out for new services and exploration. They keep us quite busy answering questions about chipsets and what the future will look like for connectivity, and not wanting to tie themselves down technologically. There's a good bit of exploration. There's not so much money coming out yet from those sectors, I would say new money, but there is optimism coming from those areas. Also, certainly from Europe and the US, we see continued activity and a good bit of churn that we expect over the next year or two associated with the in-flight connectivity.
Okay, and Mark, do you share that perspective, or
yeah, I guess I'll go back to my remarks earlier. I think the industry really has to think long term and play the long game, and I think we're seeing some of that in the U.S. at this point, maybe in contrast to Asia, and you can see from the news reports and media that airlines are really taking the opportunity to restructure themselves, restructure their fleets, restructure their business, adjust things, and I think many of them are also looking at how do I get the passenger back on the plane, and certainly health considerations are important, but also I think we should expect consumers to really value the idea of being connected and being seamlessly connected and being able to get on a plane if they're going to travel and be connected and in contact either with the office or with their home or with their loved ones. So I do see that there's going to be interest in that by the major carriers, and both international and domestic, and they're going to want to explore new models and see what's possible. I think the people and airlines are toying with the idea of perhaps changing the model for the passenger, making it more of an amenity, as Jim mentioned, and we'll see how that plays out. From a business and a technology standpoint, that's certainly possible to do. We've made statements about that, so we see that being coming out in the marketplace. I think airlines. I'm sorry.
No, that
continue.
All right. Okay. And Bill, have you seen market geographical market developments in response to the pandemic?
Yes, and as you just mentioned, it's going to be something to be determined in the longer run. We're still delivering Hollywood movies, for example, to the Navy ships, to the airlines, to the ships and planes in flight the way we always have. But they're not generating the revenues, obviously, that they have done in the past. What will happen? I think it depends on the solution to this corona virus, and if the passenger people can get back on the planes and start purchasing movies on the planes and whatnot, and if this activity on the ships and that, it hasn't played out yet, in other words. So we're still doing what we always did, and that with delivery boys, we get paid to do that. So it hasn't impacted us as much, but there is no question that they're not being, the content is not being devoured the way it was. And how long will that go on? I think that the question is still on the table.
Okay, many thanks, Bill. Now, if we turn to the confidence and passenger confidence, the provision of service, instilling that confidence in passengers is obviously key. With zero-touch services, contactless payments, there's also an emerging a trend, because connectivity is improving, for passengers to increasingly access their own content, and as they do, there's this shift provide an opportunity for a shift in behaviour of airlines, and provide an opportunity to reduce expenditure on content and redirect it for additional bandwidth. Mark, do you want to opine on that?
I'm happy to address that, and maybe Tim has some additional comments. Yeah, I do think that there are some airlines are thinking about it in that way, and they're looking at, what does it cost to install and maintain an in-flight entertainment system, when if I just gave the passengers internet, it might solve a big number of my problems. And that's true to a certain extent. And I think if an airline is smart, that what they're really focusing on is the passenger experience, and how do I get that passenger to get back on my aircraft the next time they make a choice about traveling. So it's really more about rethinking the passenger experience. And as we think more and more about how we use our phones, our laptops at home, or when we're on travel, we really are more interested in looking at the things that we've already subscribed to, that we're already interested in, and may or may not think it's important that I look at content that's on the aircraft. I think there's a place for both, but I do think there are a lot of carriers that are looking a lot more at the passenger experience and using the internet connectivity, in-flight connectivity, as an alternative to offering traditional in-flight entertainment, particularly for smaller aircraft and shorter flights. So, I think that's going to be a trend. But I also think that every airline is going to be different. Every airline is going to want to do some things differently, and it doesn't mean the in-flight entertainment market is going to go away. I think it's probably going to change and evolve, just as the in-flight connectivity market is going to change and evolve.
Thank you, Mark. And Tim, do you?
Sure. Yeah, I think Mark is right. There is a middle ground where some airlines will choose to have good in-flight entertainment available to the customers without a seatback device. It seems that this will become quite popular. Today, or sort of pre-pandemic, we saw a good bit of custom in-flight entertainment, sort of bespoke solutions, airline by airline, on content, which can tend to be rather expensive for the airline, maybe passed along to the passenger. Certainly more expensive for us to provide. We found that for entertainment, if we provided certain packages, that this was attractive, certainly during the pandemic, and it's gotten enough traction that there's a platform that will be made available to the airlines to select these packages. And so we think providing entertainment, but in a more economical way, perhaps without impacting the quality so much, but removing some of the more expensive elements or spikes that are really unnecessary from a passenger's perspective, or perhaps considered unnecessary by most passengers. And then, as Mark pointed out, increased connectivity reliance. We're already seeing more streaming, people using their own subscriptions for accessing content when it's available to them. This is a strong desire, and we get feedback regularly from those that can receive it, that they enjoy it and want it to continue, and those that can't want it. And this has been a trend for quite a long time, but the pandemic seems to have aroused it a little more.
Okay. And Bill, are you witnessing the same trends?
Yes, we find that people are getting more comfortable too, going online all the time. So the number of ships, the number of planes have grown, and the amount of traffic that's going across. We can monitor that because of the way we provide it. So we do see a continual growth and interest in that kind of thing. I think there will be a good future for it.
So we've explored the importance of satellite connectivity to the cabin, but in terms of the actual in-cabin connectivity, we have different models. We've got we have the provision of Wi-Fi in the cabin, and we've got folks like Panasonic also delivering cellular connectivity within the cabin. Now, within Europe, the regulatory body, the CEPT, is in the process of studying 5G connectivity in the cabin, so putting a 5G picocell in the cabin. What applications can you see for such a service? And I'll put that one to Tim in the first instance.
Sure. So it certainly is intriguing. There's a good bit of regulatory and interference issues to overcome. As an engineer, I see regulatory issues certainly as aircraft are crossing countries and continents, but also just the getting around some of the technical hurdles that they will encounter to go through. It does seem, just to answer your question more directly, business aviation is certainly a good target for this, because if you do have limitations, technical limitations on upload or concerns about interference that cause there to be sort of a reduction in power that you can use, maybe a lower demand that you would see from a smaller number of passengers, such as would be on business aviation flights, would probably be a better target for 5G initially than anything commercially. However, we continue to pay attention to the developments and sort of take a wait and see to see if some of these hurdles can be overcome economically.
Yeah. Just to your point about the regulatory aspects of that and the potential for interference. A CEPT have already opined and issued a report, I think, I don't think I know, which says that 5G connectivity within the cabin, not to the cabin, will not increase the interference environment, and they've already established that there's a route to a harmonized European framework. So it's true that the operators would need national approvals for countries of overflight, etc. So with that in mind, does your opinion change? Or
certainly within the cabin, I think
within the cabin, not to the cabin.
Within the cabin. Yeah. I mean, even with 3G, we saw some potential benefits, and airlines such as Emirates having a modicum of success operating these picocells within the cabin, and genuinely making the sign-on experience very seamless, and allowing people to essentially use the aircraft as a roaming tower, and simplifying the payment methods, simplifying just the sheer process of connecting to the network is something that this 3G for Emirates provided, and I think 5G for within the cabin will also be very beneficial.
Yeah, very beneficial.
Yeah. Colin, I'd be happy to make a comment here.
Sure, Mark.
Yeah, I think that using 5G in the cabin is a natural extension of going from 2G to 3G and 4G, and Air Mobile and Ceylon Air have been very active in that marketplace. And so part of it is, do use the cellular bands on the aircraft. But the other thing that 5G and some of the new standards that go with it is support for Wi-Fi and ways of doing authentication through your cellular provider or a telecommunications provider that make the experience seamless for the passenger. And I think actually that is one of the more interesting things that's happening in the 5G space. And there industry bodies out there like the Seamless Air Alliance, which we're part of, that are really active and interesting in finding ways and methodologies for enabling a seamless passenger experience where you walk from the home to the gate, to the tarmac, to the aircraft, and are seamlessly authenticated. And we firmly believe that that's going to be one of the factors that helps encourage greater passenger usage and drive usage up, which is going to be, I think, interesting and important for the industry.
Completely agree.
So this is just so yes, there are applications there, and to really drive the success, it would be to include the in-cabin connectivity as part of a seamless gate-to-gate communication channel.
Yeah, exactly, gate to gate, and I think it's going to bear on how the airlines approach the passenger experience, and I think it'll be interesting to see how the airlines react to this, adopt it, and support it.
And how the regulatory bodies allow it, particularly within the U.S., which has been a little behind on allowing some capability.
Yeah, in terms of the 2G, 3G, and 4G, I think it's pretty universally allowed. Not entirely, but generally it's universally allowed in all countries other than the US. Yeah.
I think the US is a little bit unique in that we've gotten hung up on voice communication in the cabin, which is not an issue in other parts of the world. It's interesting that a lot of the use of the onboard 3G and 4G systems is actually data, texting and email, and I think that certainly suggests that it can be used on the aircraft if the regulators and the industry within a certain region like the U.S. become more comfortable with that use model, voice or no voice.
I agree.
Bill?
Yeah.
I think there's a big difference also in the type of content we're talking about. We're delivering movies into the planes or even a live video. I don't think a little delay here and there matters. But if you're talking about something like voice conversation, going up to the GEO and back, frankly, I find it a little bit disruptive to try and talk on that. Maybe when some of it is moved over to the LEOs, particularly, for example, they may be changing that. But movies, television is quite different than interactive activity. And I think the experience is simple in the broadcast world, but in the interactive world, we need some changes, improvements there before it's going to be more prolific.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Now, I was just about to touch on some of what you've just said. So how will technological advances such as the deployment of the NGSO mega constellations and advances in flat panel antennas impact this market? Yeah, Jim, do you want to take a start?
Sure.
On that one?
Yeah, we have done tests, in-flight tests on LEO, and saw 18 millisecond round trip times, which is spectacular, and even lower than cellular. And this lower latency produces an experience that's noticeably different from geostationary. So our thought process is that once passengers are on a flight that has this capability with this extremely low latency, and they're able to access applications reliably, as Bill mentioned, voice and video are one of them, but also virtual reality, even enterprise apps, secure enterprise apps that are not so snappy on a geo connection because of the encumbrance of the security protocols that sort of override some of the tricks that we in the industry have done to improve or to mask this latency. The gaming for the family will become something that people are relying on, and we believe that this will be noticeable enough that people will tend to select an airline that has this capability when practical to a certain extent.
Thank you. Do any of the other panelists have an opinion on this?
I mean, look, I think if we take a look at the big LEO trend in general, like what do we really see here? What we see first and foremost is Starlink going all in, right? You know, the fact that by the end of the year, Starlink will have launched 1,000 satellites this year in all likelihood. I mean, they're already north of 900. You figure they get a couple more Starlink launches off. That's an extraordinary accomplishment. And I think it signifies what those of us who watch this industry for a long time have always held to be true, which is all it takes is someone with sufficient resolve to actually build this network, and it's going to change the facts on the ground dramatically. The type of low latency environment that Tim was just talking about would revolutionize the cost per bit and also the quality per bit that is available to the airline passenger. But you started off by talking about something which I want to go back to, which is the antenna, right? The antenna is critical, and the price point for the antenna isn't there yet. You have to move down the scale curve in order to get to a point where the business model actually closes for the airlines. Coming out of the pandemic, the amount of capital airlines are going to be able to deploy to actually retrofit existing aircraft, let alone new aircraft, which deliveries are a real question mark over the next couple of years for Airbus and Boeing. So we can talk about line fit all day long, but the question is, you know, the retrofit marketplace, if you want to actually move to a LEO-based network, is going to be dependent on having the right equipment to put on the aircraft and getting that equipment type certified and actually getting it into the channel. And there's a lot of questions that have to be answered before we're in a world where Starlink is the default provider. But here's the thing that we all know is if the economics are as compelling as what Tim was just outlining, and the QoS is as compelling as what you were talking about, then that's the way the world is going. Capital will flow to the development of the antenna that is necessary in order to provide connectivity to the Starlink constellation, or to OneWeb, or to Project Kuiper, or to Telesat's system, or any other operator that's talking about NGSOs, which include pretty much everybody, you know, from SES to Inmarsat to Intelsat to Viasat. So I think when we as a firm really look at the space, we think Starlink is here to stay. We think that it's going to provide real competition and competitive impetus to each of the verticals that it's focused on, residential broadband being a big one of those, but aviation being close behind it.
Okay, many thanks, Mark. Now, if we just move on a little now, in-flight broadband connectivity is not only about scheduled commercial airlines, but also about the business jet market. In the context of the overall IFC market size, has the non-scheduled aero market become all the more important as a result of the pandemic?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that one because I think we can see very clearly that what is being left behind at GoGo, which is the business aviation business that started as Aircell with air to ground, is a terrific asset, right? I mean, if you look at that business, it's growing at the top line at, you know, very healthy double digits. It's profitable, it's cash flow positive, it's all the things that consumer aviation has never been able to kind of get scale and break away and be. Vertical integration promises to enhance the economics of consumer aviation, but business aviation is a profitable business here and will remain so. We're seeing Viasat actually get type certified on a larger number of business jets and different types of business jets. That's an ongoing process. Inmarsat is targeting that market as well. So there's a lot of opportunity in the private aviation, or general aviation as they call it, kind of sector here. And when you really look at where price insensitive customers reside right now, private aviation, large yachts, government are kind of the three groups that don't have as much of a constraint in terms of the economics of what we're talking about. They just want convenience of connectivity, right? And if you're able to pay for convenience, then it's something that you're actually going to go ahead and do. And again, as a firm, when we look at attractive investment opportunities, we look at businesses that are less exposed to the consumer right now, because the consumer is a big unknown. And if you crosshatch passenger air traffic and the situation we still find ourselves in from a public safety and public health point of view with price sensitivity, consumer looks tough, private aviation looks great. And that's why you could see a private aviation company like GoGo existing as a profitable standalone business for many years to come. But the flip side of that is why we're seeing consumer aviation driven increasingly towards vertical integration.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd like to add to Jim's comments a bit. I agree 100% that the business jet market is very important, and it's probably a bright spot in part of the recovery here. If you look at the numbers, and business jet travel, particularly in the U.S., is probably back to 80 to 90% of its previous levels, and so there's still a lot of activity in that space, and so it's important to us because as Intelsat we have products in the business jet space. Our Flex Exec business jet product. I think that part of that we've also noticed is that yes, it is a good margin, probably price insensitive market for the services, because the expectation is a high level service, high value for the money that's being paid. But I think there's also we also have to give thought to the equipment on the aircraft, and similar to LEO, antenna technology, terminal technology is very important to the business jets, partly from a cost factor, but also from a space and form factor standpoint. You can't put big antennas on small business jets, and to do it cost effectively is still a challenge in the industry. And I know companies like SD, we're working with them on ways to address this. So I think that will be a factor in the market going forward. Again, great business to be in at this point in time, a lot of growth potential, as long as you continue to do the right things and deliver the types of services that clientele expects with the right equipment on board the aircraft that doesn't get in the way of other things that they want to do on the aircraft.
Many thanks, Mark. And if we look beyond the business jet or the in-flight connectivity for commercial passenger airlines or business jets, the drone market is expected to exponentially grow, especially for long endurance intercontinental drones in respect of their command and control links and probably specific payload applications. Is that something that the panel sees as a growth area for the satellite industry?
Certainly, if I may, we are already seeing a good bit of traction with government and military, and not just military, but also governments that are looking to outfit observation, search and rescue, and law enforcement. And these government and military applications are benefiting from commercial networks, whereas previously they tended to focus more on proprietary, X-band satellites, for example, and dedicated equipment or certainly dedicated payload, and moving to a commercial model where they can hide in plain sight. They can encrypt end to end and be as secure as they would be on a dedicated resource, but they sort of bring about a few benefits, and one of those is redundancy and resiliency, disaster recovery, which is organic in the commercial space, because we launch a lot of satellites so we can make certain that if one fails, then there's another one to take over, and dollars are out the window until it does. So there's a lot of resources available to these organizations, and they're taking advantage of it. For drones specifically, video is a huge part of this, and the upload is sometimes sensitive for satellites. So we do see growth only because there's just a massive amount of bandwidth that's required to meet that need. And we do see these non-geostationary, LEO and MEO as well, playing a big role in servicing these drones, because they have a benefit of, at least LEO with polar orbits, having the benefit of global connectivity for those drones that you mentioned that are long distance and traveling so far. But they also have the ability to focus capacity on those drones and give them a dedicated satellite or a dedicated beam across multiple satellites as they travel, giving them enough bandwidth to really change what they're capable of transmitting.
Okay, many thanks, Tim. Bill?
Yeah, I was going to say there's also some public safety applications that we do, for example, for the New York City Police Department. It's actually, if you've watched the New Year's Eve celebration and the ball comes down at midnight, there are also some crowd shots shot from drones. So we're capturing that for them. And if you went to Vimeo, there is some video footage that we captured for the fire department. Buildings on fire some of the trucks have drones on them that they launch, and we set that up and capture the video for them. I think there is a future in that too. I think there is a market for some quick response drone coverage, and there are two examples we're doing. We do some other ones too. We've done football games at the Naval Academy, for example, with a drone flying overhead.
Okay, many thanks. So Jim or Mark, do you want to comment on that? Or there's one further subject I'd like to cover before we're at the top of the hour, and that was to touch on competition. So if you've got anything to add on the drone market, please do. If not, I'll move on.
Well, I'll just add briefly that the drone market is active. A lot of it is government focused, and they have an interest in commercial services as well as more specialized services that meet their unique needs. We manage that through a different part of our business, the Intelsat government side of our business, but I think there is an interest in it. It's used differently, and it's a segment of the market that it's important to serve, and we do serve it.
Okay, thanks, Mark. And Jim?
Let's go to the competition question with 5 minutes left.
Oh, okay. So on competition, there's significant and accelerating commercial interest in the adoption of high altitude platforms technology to provide cost-effective connectivity. Do you see HAPS as complementary or as competitive technology?
I'll take it. Yeah. So I think this all goes back to kind of the economics of the model. From a technical point of view, we've seen these models for some time, but no one has really kind of taken the plunge. And I think the reason for that is there's an awful lot of capital chasing satellite-based solutions. And it's not enough for it to be a workable technical solution. It has to be a financial or business model that can actually close on a very large investment if you want to do HAPS. If we do see HAPS, I would expect to see it as a complement to existing systems. And I would think that those are probably experiments with the concept by existing operators. I think the idea of a complete greenfield system based on this technology is unlikely to attract the capital that it requires from the markets, unless they're able to find just a true believer in the technology who has extraordinarily deep pockets and is willing to kind of fund into a very open-ended situation. Right now, we actually see the opposite type of scenario. We actually see too much capacity coming to market from, if you look at the big LEOs and you look at the GEOs with their HTS solutions, and you look at MEO solutions that are in the works as well, it just feels like there's so much being thrown at this from the satellite point of view. And that's before you look at ATG, which until now has really been mostly a North American phenomenon with a bit of activity in Western Europe. So I would expect to see progress on a broader ETG solution before HAPS really took over the world.
Yeah, and again, would you see that as complementary to satellite, the ATG? No.
I think ATG is very much complementary to satellite, which is, I think, a critical part of the deal that Mark and the team at Intelsat did, was getting ongoing access to ATG, specifically, the upgraded ATG with 5G in the United States. And again, it's a little bit like talking about residential broadband. Anywhere there's an opportunity to do ATG, where there's spectral availability, where there's infrastructure availability, you need the fiber footprint to support the towers. Anywhere that exists, you're going to see ATG. It's just way more efficient and way more cost efficient than satellite, where you have that necessary terrestrial infrastructure. So if they can have ATG, we will, and it'll be complementary. But more esoteric solution like apps, I think that's down the road.
Yeah. Mark, do you have an opinion?
Yeah, I would very much agree with Jim's comments. This is very much a complementary technology. It's not clear that HAPS you would build a global network out of it, but I think that there's some areas where it might be very complementary to the networks we have in place today, and really could serve a good purpose. And so we're excited about exploring that and seeing what the potential for that is. I think, like the comments about ATG, we're going to see a lot of networks out there, and I think we're entering the point where it becomes, can we use the right network in the right place for the right types of connectivity to the right market? And I don't think there'll be a single solution for that. I think there'll be some backbone solutions like GEO that we have today, and ATG to a certain extent when you're over land. What I do see is a bigger move towards hybrid networks, software-defined networks, software-defined technologies to support those networks, and to really be flexible in what network you use when and where for the right application. And I think that's where a lot of the innovation is going to be happening going forward.
Well, thanks for those comments, Mark and Jim. And with that, I think we're coming to the end of our time. We do have a couple of questions from the audience to which we don't have the time to address, but we will look to provide responses to those that raised them in the next 48 hours. Now, I would like to thank the audience and the panelists for participating and for their insights in this exciting topic, and I hope you've all enjoyed it. Recording of the session will be available soon on the GVF website. I've mentioned that we'll provide answers to the questions we didn't mention or didn't manage to tackle today. And I just want to raise that there will be a future GVF webinar in the series. That is scheduled for the 3rd of December at 3 p.m. UK time or 10 a.m. Eastern time, and that will focus on building new space, what's required. So until then, I thank you again, and see you soon. Thank you.